Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be revisiting an old series of mine in which I talk about the pros and cons of a specific guitar model. So why am I remaking these videos? Well, at the end of the day, I made them early on in my YouTube journey, which I guess I'm still pretty early on in, but now I'm much more experienced. I know how to use lighting a lot better. I have better equipment, and I don't have better grammar apparently. But now I feel I'm in a better situation to be able to do these videos justice. But enough talking about it, let's get into the video. So what guitar am I holding here in my hands right now? Well, if you guys are new and haven't seen any of my videos before, this is my 1979 Gibson Les Paul Custom. This is my absolute dream guitar, and I ended up saving up for months just to be able to afford it. I worked my butt off, and once I actually got it, could not be any more happy with it. I love this thing to death. But if you look around me, I do have a couple other Les Pauls. That is my 2014 Epiphone Les Paul Traditional Pro. That is my Gibson 2008 Custom Shop / Epiphone Gibson Les Paul Victoria. That one's being sold. Thank God I don't have to say the name anymore because it's a lot of words. And this right here is my 2022 Gibson Les Paul Standard Gold Top with the P90s. But that is all the Les Pauls I have in the collection right now, but let's get on with the video. The first pro I have is that there's a ton of options you can choose from. The Les Paul is not a new guitar. They've been around for quite a while, since the early 50s. And with that, tells there's going to be a lot of different variations and a ton of different specific models within the Les Paul name. You have your Les Paul Customs, you have your Les Paul Customs, the P90s, you have your Les Paul Standards, you have your Les Paul Traditionals, you have Epiphones, you have so many different Les Pauls that you could choose from, and basically an infinite variety of colors as well. There's the Les Paul Supreme, which they actually just remade, which I'm not sure how I feel about the remake, but the old Les Paul Supremes from the early 2000s, beautiful guitars. So basically what I'm getting at is that there's gonna be a Les Paul for you. There's also a whole lot of range in price. Now, we'll talk about price a little bit later, but you can go up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars for a 1959 Burst, or you can go all the way down for a Headstock repaired Standard for 1,500 bucks. No, yeah, that's still pretty expensive, especially for a damaged guitar or a repaired guitar. But that kind of just goes to show the vast variety of price ranges you can also choose from. Now, with all the pros that a Les Paul has, there's probably just as many cons. The first con I'm going to talk about is their weight. This guitar here is, like I said, from the 70s, and in the 70s, they did not weight relieve their guitars. This guitar is over 11 pounds. Now take in mind, not all Les Pauls from back then are that heavy. This one's definitely an exception. This is probably the heaviest Les Paul I've ever played, and definitely the heaviest Les Paul I've ever owned. So keep that in mind. But even then, a 9-pound guitar is a big guitar, and that's not something that everybody likes. Personally, I don't mind the weight of Les Paul. Obviously, I'm a Les Paul guy, I like them a lot. But it does bother a lot of people, and that makes total sense. If you're playing standing up on stage, it can get a little bit tiring, trust me. No, yeah, there are ways to balance it out. If you have a thick strap, a thick, nice leather strap with some good grip on it and good pads, it won't be as big as an issue, but it's still 10 pounds that you're lugging around. So it's something to keep in mind. The next pro about the Gibson Les Paul is that they are absolutely stunning. As I mentioned in the first pro, there's a ton of different color options you can choose from, a ton of different top options as well. The 70s Les Pauls, as an example, most of them just came with these plain top guitars here. This one has a 3-piece maple top, while most other Les Pauls will have a 2-piece maple top. There's quilted maple, there's flame maple, as you can see up there. There's so many different types of wood. Most of the time it's going to be maple, but there's different varieties of maple. But there are also the koa top ones, which aren't very common, but you could still find them. But if you don't like the natural wood look, you could always go for a solid top one like this, like the gold top. And you could find Les Pauls with just a ton of different colors that aren't wood style like this. Yeah, they're pretty, but that doesn't mean they're perfect. The next con I'm going to be talking about is the upper fret access. Now, it is better or worse on some Les Pauls. For example, on my 60s Standard, which is conveniently right behind me so you can't see it, that has a much thicker neck, which makes it even harder to get up to these higher frets. On my 1979, it's not that bad, but it does have a very thick heel joint here, which even still, you can get there, but it doesn't make it super comfortable. You kind of have to wrap around the body a little bit. It does get in the way, while if you're playing something like an SG, it's not nearly as bad. So you can get up there, but it's not very comfortable. Now, Gibson does offer a few guitars like the Les Paul Modern and a few other models that do have this area kind of carved out a bit more. Now, I have played a Les Paul Modern. It's not perfect. Is it better? Yeah, but not by much. That's kind of just what you get with a single cut style guitar with only one cutaway instead of two, like an SG or a Strat or something, but that's just something you kind of have to deal with. Could it be better? Absolutely, but it is a con of the Les Paul. Another big pro about the Gibson Les Paul is just that they're very simply laid out. It's as simple as just having 2 volumes, 2 tones, and a 3-way selector switch. Most Les Pauls will just have these 2 pickups here, but you can find them with 1 pickup, and you can find them with 3. There's of course a lot of pros that go along with having a simple guitar. One of which being is that you don't have any option paralysis. There's not a ton of different knobs and switches and everything you kind of have to mess with, and it can kind of stop you in your tracks. But if you're just playing a Les Paul and you want to get a little bit quackier of a tone, a little bit more rhythm sound, you flick it to the neck pickup, and there you go. You're ready to solo. You're ready to go back with your riff, flick it back down to the bridge. Boom, you're ready to go. That's something I really appreciate about most of the guitars I own, is that most of them here are very simple. I don't really have anything that has a ton of different switches and knobs and stuff like that. And to me, simplicity is key. Another big con is that Les Pauls aren't very comfortable guitars. And that just kind of comes down to their construction. If you look here, most of them will have a carved top here, but that's not enough to really provide you much comfort, especially because it just comes right to a corner here. Now these, I mean, it's not sharp, but it's like, it's just jagged. It's not gracious like a Strat would be. And it's the same thing on the belly side. It's just a harsh corner. So there's no belly carve right there. It kind of digs into your ribs a little bit. Not super comfortable. Now the necks on these things, very comfortable. But the bodies, like I said, there's no comfort carving or anything like that. It's just a slab of mahogany with a maple top. Not super comfortable. Another pro behind the Les Paul is, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, they've been around for a long time, and that means there's a lot of history behind them. The YouTube channel, The 5 Watt World, has a couple really good videos about the history of the Les Paul, and it's a really good watch. You should check out their channel. But part of them being around for so long, and they have such a name behind the brand, so much more than just a name in the headstock of Gibson. And something that results of that is that these guitars, they're collectible. A lot of Les Paul guitars and a lot of Gibson guitars in general are great investments. This guitar here is a perfect example of that. I've owned this guitar for a little over 2 years, and just in those 2 years, the prices of these things used on the market is continuing to go up. And of course, I hope it continues to go up in value. Now, no, I don't intend on selling this guitar, but if I ever had an emergency and I needed to, I know that I'd be able to get more than what I paid for originally. Now, I don't personally think that guitars should be investments. I think they should be something you enjoy, but it's obviously not a bad thing, though. Another very popular con that people love to talk about when it comes to Gibsons is their tuning stability. Now, personally, I've never really had any issues with any of the tuning stability on any of the Gibsons I've ever played or owned, but there's enough people out there talking about how bad Gibson's tuning stability is to where it's probably going to be an issue for a lot of people. Part of that has to do with the angle of the headstock, which I'll talk a little bit about later, where the strings and the nut, there's a lot of different angles here that go on. I'm not exactly a scientist or a physicist or anything like that. I don't exactly know what causes Gibson's bad tuning stability, but you'll tend to run into issues with the G string of your Les Paul. Like I said, I haven't really had many issues with my tuning stability on the Les Paul, but a lot of people do. And probably one of the biggest pros about a Gibson Les Paul is their sound. Les Pauls just have one of the biggest sounds of almost any guitar. And if you guys still don't understand what I'm saying, just play one. Plug it in, play it loud, and you'll know. And in addition to their big sound, they're very versatile. You can play them on pretty much anything. You can see country artists using them, you can see metal musicians using them, a little bit of jazz back in the day. Les Pauls can be played on anything. Or anything can be played on a Les Paul. That makes more sense. And speaking about the headstock angle, let's talk about one of the biggest cons of a lot of Gibson instruments, and that is the headstock angle. A little bit further into detail, they can break. Now, a lot of the late 60s to very early 80s guitars had the volute here. Now, what this is basically just a thicker piece of wood back here, which provides a bit more meat behind the headstock angle here. That way, in theory, if it is dropped, it can sustain a bigger amount of damage without breaking. Here's what my 60s Les Paul Standard looks like. If you could see, it's just a straight jacked angle back here. In this area, there's a lot of tension in this area. Of course, you have the strings pulling this way, and you have the truss rod pulling that way. If it can get dropped right here, there's a high chance of it breaking, and it's very common to find. So the headstock angle is definitely one of Gibson's fabled cons, which a lot of people hate Gibson for. I'm fortunate enough to where I've never broken a headstock on a Gibson guitar, but let's hope it stays that way. Now the last pro, and it's kind of two pros, but it kind of ties them together, is that these guitars just have something special about them. I wouldn't own 4 Les Pauls unless I liked Les Pauls. There's a reason why a lot of Les Paul owners have their Les Paul, no matter how many other guitars they have. If they have a Les Paul, there's a high chance that it's one of the most played guitars in their collection, if not their #1 guitar. And it's no different with me. I love this guitar. This is my #1. Like I said, I don't think I'll ever sell this thing just because I don't want to be without it. Les Pauls have a ton of personality. You pick one up, you play one, it just rocks. There's a lot of other brands, and I won't say any names, but if you just pick up some of those other guitars, they might be great guitars, they might be very well constructed, but they just don't have that personality to them like most Gibsons do, and then specifically the Les Paul. Now, kind of tying it in here, I'm biased. I'm a Les Paul guy. But can you really fault me for that? Every time I pick up a Les Paul, it just reminds me of why I'm a Les Paul guy. Something about the shape, the pros and the cons put together just really resonates with me for whatever reason. I can't exactly explain it, but I don't really need to. If it speaks to me, it speaks to me. Now, the last con I'll be talking about is the price. There's no secret. Gibsons, let alone Les Pauls, are just very expensive guitars. Part of that comes down to their construction. They're all made in USA, and they have the whole process of adding a carved maple top on top of the Les Paul, which is already just a mahogany body, takes a lot of time. The binding takes a lot of time. The fret nibs here, not an easy process to do. They kind of have to hand carve those out. So because of all the labor hours and the difficulty of producing one of these things, that's another reason why they're just so expensive. Another reason on top of that is people pay for it. If people pay for it, why would they want to lower the price? Does it suck? Absolutely, but it's just kind of part of being a Les Paul owner is you just kind of have to accept that it's a lot of money. And that turns away a lot of people, unfortunately. Now, yeah, there are a lot of great options. For example, like the 59 Epiphone Les Pauls that just came out, or not, maybe not just came out, but came out over a couple years ago. Those are great guitars, and I think they're just about $1,000, which still isn't cheap. But it does give you that Les Paul feel at the fraction of the price of a Gibson, or I was going to say a real Les Paul, but it's still a real Les Paul. So price is one of the biggest cons about a Gibson. Are they perfect guitars? Absolutely not. I don't think there really is a perfect guitar, but to me, this is as close as you can get. Regardless of all those imperfections, I still think that even those imperfections just make this guitar what it is, and that makes me love them even more. So do you guys think a Les Paul is for you? Let me know in the comments, and if you guys can think of any other pros or cons, let me know in the comments down below. So thank you guys so much for watching, and if you guys liked this video, feel free to click like, and if you loved it and you want to see more content from me, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.